Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's 10:20 p.m. on the 4th of April, 2020, which means it's 4:20 and 10:20. Bye. But the whole month is 4:20, obviously. I mean, just look at your calendar. So today was a very interesting day. It was a Saturday, which means we had fraud nights, and we did something a little bit different today. We did Brood War Day. This time it was actually successful, unlike last week. We managed to, well, success is in the eye of the beholder, of course. We were not able to be super successful because of the fact that, some people had port issues, and then we found some crashes in Hydra, but we played some Hydra maps in multiplayer, like full PvP, basically. So, for example, we played the first Zerg mission, and that has 5 players active, the 2 Terrans, the 2 Zerg, and 1 Protoss. And then we played the Terran mission, the first Terran mission, and we involved a lot of... that was a 3v3, 3 Terrans against 3 Zerg. So lots going on there. Opened up some observer slots as well. UED Commander mostly occupied those. And while we did find some very silly technical issues, and we did encounter some very severe networking problems that most of the player base was able to resolve by the end of the stream, which was nice. And obviously exciting for next week. Less problems means more games. I also think that it reminded me of just how much I enjoy playing cooperative and PvP content in an RTS sense when it happens to be with the Hydra game state. Now, I'm not here to suck my own dick live on stream, but I am going to tell you that I do actually prefer the Hydra game state to the base game, especially with like the resource management and stuff. And I think that the PvP nights, in this sense, the fraud nights, have been a good test, a good barometer. This particular night, at least, if it's any sort of example of what's to come. Any indication of what's to come, I think they'll be a good way to gauge how competitive and how enjoyable the maps that I've made are. Now, ever since I developed Stormborn, I've been thinking a lot more concretely about level design and been writing down some of my thoughts and stuff, and mostly just trying to observe where the faults in a layout are and how I can improve them, and try to be like critical, but with a plan to resolve any flaws that I find during my critical examination. Whereas before, maybe I would observe a flaw, but I wouldn't have any idea on how to fix it, or the ideas that I would employ would have other flaws that I wouldn't have foreseen at the time. So I've just become more wise in that sense, but also being more intelligent in terms of being able to actually implement any suggestion that I may end up coming up with for fixing it. Any potential solution. And so as a result of that, I think my levels have gotten even better than Stormborn. But obviously I'm also dealing with somewhat antiquated bases for the levels, where I'm dealing with maps that I made starting way back in like December of 2018, I think. Was when I first started some of the maps, like the first Terran mission, the second Terran mission. The first Zerg mission was, I think, early 2019 or something like that. So these are some pretty old frameworks for the maps. But I do think I've been able to make enough significant changes to all of them so far to make them more exciting and more enjoyable. And I think it sort of the results bear that out anyway, because of the fact that we're able to have a fair amount of fun playing them. And so that is something that I can pat myself on the back for live on stream and not feel too bad about. It's one of those things that when combined with the fact that you're dealing with a new modded game state, has the ability of, the novelty factor at play, where a lot of people are learning it for the first time, really playing it for the first time. Otherwise, they've only seen me play it, or maybe seen some playthroughs that are posted in the channel on Discord every now and then. The first time directly interacting with the game systems and experiencing it, I think it ends up being pretty neat. And even once you get past the novelty factor, I do think that this will potentially be a very long-lasting sort of tradition. Where even if we don't end up doing it specifically on fraud nights, maybe we do it once or twice a week, just for the sake of experimenting and, playing around in these maps, and it'll be good feedback for testing that stuff. And, there's some very basic things that I hadn't necessarily considered, like the quantity of resources in a certain base, or the distance from the command center or the nexus to the base. And these are things that I hadn't considered because, I was mostly focused on what the players would be handling. And I forgot to conceptualize in that moment when I first created the bases all the way back in 2019 and 2018. I forgot to conceptualize the opponents as players in that sense. And I've obviously done a better job of that more recently with my more recent maps. But again, dealing with these older frameworks, you find issues like that and you error correct where possible, obviously. But it's one of those things that I hadn't considered until today when working on those. And I got some feedback from Don and some other people who had said, hey, these resources are a little far away for me to have a balanced experience playing this. Or at least that was a concern, and maybe the results would bear out differently, but at least the concern was raised, and it was one that I had not considered because I had been dealing with something that was taken as a constant because it had been, put together and finalized like a year or two ago at this point. So pretty neat, pretty exciting to go back to that content and revisit it from a different angle, literally playing in the shoes of an AI, where an AI would be otherwise, and being able to come up with some interesting strategies from their place. And I think that kind of experimentation should probably be had anyway. I should probably play from the perspective of the AI enemies in Hydra every now and then, just to remind myself of what they have at their disposal as far as tools. And maybe that can help come up with some interesting strategies as a result. But that is a rabbit hole I could go down by itself, and probably the better served for discussion on a podcast or something with Mesk, where I might talk about the playing from the perspective of the opponents of the AI. Certainly could be a by design video as well. So stay tuned. Maybe there will be some follow-up with that. I think there undoubtedly will. It's just a matter of when, not if. Now, one of the other things that recently happened is the creation of a forum. If you're not familiar with the forum already, you should probably check it out. If you're at all interested in more serious and long-form, in-depth discussion with the idea that all of the posts on the forum are going to be reinforcing discussion points and contributing towards something that will actually be worthwhile and not just a time waster or a way to kill time while you're waiting for Corona to kill you, that would be one of the things that you might be interested in. The whole point of the forum is to serve as an accessory to the idea of this channel, which is more or less an educational look, an analytical look at gaming standards within gaming. So everything surrounding gaming in terms of the player base, and also, of course, not just the psychological aspect of that, but also the quality and how you can improve and maximize the quality of titles. And that is, in a nutshell, what this channel is about. In addition to, obviously, the development of my own content, I'm also exploring these ideas at the same time. So you are dealing with quite a variety of topics there, but the forum is not meant to be just another place for you to have general discussions. They're meant to be very targeted, and that's why there's no general chat. That's why you have to register and wait for me to manually approve you, just like the Discord server is closed and gated. So too is the forum, is because I'm trying to make sure that all of the conversation that we're having is in-depth and pointed and designed specifically to improve somebody's understanding, to answer questions, to again, provide an environment where education is expected, not just fostered or encouraged, but actually a mandate, more or less. So if that interests you and you happen to be interested in participating in discussions about things like, what justifies the inclusion of heroes in an RTS, or even more niche topics like canonized custom content, stuff like the legitimacy of insurrection and retribution and other such projects, considering the fact that they were Blizzard authorized, and yet they are worse than most custom content, or many custom content productions. We have all sorts of interesting discussions. And the more people that sign up and contribute, with the intent to contribute anyway, ideally the more interesting discussions we'll have. So just a little PSA. But that's also been something that's been a kind of a blast from the past, just like how playing Fraud Night today was a reminder that, hey, I actually do enjoy playing cooperative and PvP content in an RTS sense. This forum and posting in this forum and trying to spur on conversation and setting it up such that it would reinforce positive and rather productive, not necessarily positive, conversation. It reminded me that I do see a value in forums, even though I've grown more and more distant from forums lately. It's sort of similar to, I think, anyway, the idea that people, as they get older, are saying, well, video games aren't for me anymore. I guess I'm just not interested in them because the content that they're being fed and served is just terrible. So naturally, it's not going to be something that you would be particularly happy about participating within. And that would be one of those things that I would levy as far as a conversational point. It's like, you probably aren't too old for video games. You're just not interested in the shitty ones. Just like I'm probably not opposed to the purpose of a forum. It's just that I've dealt with so many shitty ones. So I'm really trying to make this one different and leading by example, posting thoughts that I think are interesting and can spur on productive and potentially useful conversations. Like perhaps with the hero thread, for example, I may end up coming across an argument that helps me improve the underlying hero systems that I'm planning on including in things like Hydra and in Consummate, or perhaps even remove them out entirely if I were convinced of that as a better alternative. And so that's just one example, but ideally there'd be all sorts of different nice conversational points that you can end up hitting as a result of the inclusion of this forum. And it's a space where you can keep track of messages without needing to pin them, which have a limit of 50 anyway, because that's reasonable. And also without needing to, search a really long conversational history for ephemeral keywords that you can't quite remember, or to, just keep scrolling up until you find it or whatever. You don't have to do any of that. Whereas on Discord, obviously you do. So it's obviously a much more sober place to be, right? It's a more very much a straightforward and formal conversation environment to have. So that's one of those things that I'm looking forward to seeing the results of that experiment, I guess. It's just one of those things that I believe has value and utility, but definitely needs to be experimented with, definitely needs to be given enough time to really take off, if it's going to quote unquote take off at all. So anyway, that's sort of the PSA there, and how it links all into everything else remains to be seen, but I think it'll be useful for myself and for other people to get some interesting thoughts posted their way, and to constantly be able to go back and reflect upon them, because they aren't just random Discord messages that you forget about in a day. So there you go. That's the DADCAW. And we're finally caught up, actually. This is the DADCAW that was the missing link, where I was supposed to be doing these once a week. So I doubled up this week to make up for the 1 week that I missed like 3 weeks ago or something. So enjoy that. We will be back to our regularly scheduled programming very soon. And just stay tuned and see what I'm doing mod streams for tomorrow, I guess. It's always tomorrow. Even if you watch this video a year from now, it's still going to be tomorrow. Just saying. One last note, I suppose, before I leave, is the conversation about the classic FPS games. That is something that I am going to be continuing with Dynamo. We're going to be doing Doom 2 this coming week, and after that, presumably Duke Nukem 3D, as well as Quake 1 and perhaps Unreal Tournament, perhaps Quake 2 and 3. I don't remember. One of those games does not have single-player content. I think it's Quake 3. Could be wrong about that. But there needs to be some sort of closure of the classic FPS games, and I think we're going to consider it done after the first Unreal Tournament and a fair bit of, like, at least the first Quake game, if not further down that series. That being said, I think that after Duke Nukem 3D, which will mark, I believe, the last 2D FPS game of note in this classic environment, that's at least mainstream and that was formative for a lot of the genre. I believe that's when we're going to take a bit of a break. Not sure how long that break will be, but I'm looking to reclaim that time for streaming additional development. So this will be even more mod streams. So if you're already sick of mod streams, you're going to be even sicker. So don't compromise your immune system and stay home. You know what I mean? But otherwise, that's pretty much the only announcement or housekeeping aspect I had to make. So that I will be hitting Doom 2 this week, rather. Not sure if we'll finish it in 2 settings. But if we do, then obviously we'll just move straight into Duke Nukem 3D. And either way, I'm pretty sure we'll be done with both of those games by the end of April. So come May, we should have more time to do mod streams, more time to do some video editing for stuff like video essays and humorous compilations, channel highlight basically, of the past few years, which will be very massive. We'll see how long that ends up being. And I think that's going to be the entirety of it. That'll be it. So stay tuned for even more content. Bye.